Chiedo scusa.
Vai, Lori.
No, scusate, cercavo l'opzione registrazione in italiano, ma qua mi
No, devi mettere sul... va bene così. Welcome to the Eumans Members Assembly, which is open also to not members. We are starting now. Before the start, some technical instructions, even though all of you should be used to that. People during the assembly will be able to speak in Italian and English, and you can choose the language that you listen to the assembly using the interpretation function at the bottom of the Zoom screen. In italiano, come tutte le nostre assemblee, sarà possibile intervenire e ascoltare sia in italiano che in inglese. E quindi potete selezionare la lingua per ascoltare e intervenire. So I'm gonna speak in English. Before starting, I want to present the order of the works of this assembly, which is the first item on the agenda. I put the link in the chat. So practical instruction: if you are a Eumans member, you can rename your name on the Zoom chat, adding the word member, so that in the voting phase, but also in the speaking phase, we can recognize if you are a member or not. Of course, we are not a crowd, so we can keep it a bit informal, but it's important to have this. And the order of the works. So we start the first 25 minutes, Marco and myself will do our introductory remarks as co-presidents, and we will present a draft of the working document for the assembly that we would like to suggest as our guidelines for the next months. If you have amendments to the order of the works and the regulation of the assembly, which is in the same document that I shared, you can propose it until 6:15. After the introductory remarks by Marco Cappato and myself, we'll proceed with the confirmation of the vote on the order of the works and the rules. And then there will be the general debate, which is open to members, activists, observers, and some invitees and guests that we're going to have with us tonight. By 8:30, if you have amendments on the political document, which is going to be the output of the assembly, you can suggest them so that then we can proceed to the conclusive phase of voting on the documents and the final remarks. We didn't include on the rules of the assembly and the order of the works amendments to the statute. The decision is because we amended our statute in March and we still need to fully implement that. But of course, we are not prevented to suggest statute amendments based on the Statute of Eumans. So let us know if really there is something burning on that matter. Of course, the opportunity is open. So I will start with my introduction and then we'll leave the floor to Marco Cappato. Okay, I start. So again, welcome everyone for the Eumans Assembly. It's the first Assembly of Eumans after the Foundational Congress in Warsaw that we had in March 2022. But it's not the first Eumans Assembly. The difference between these two phases is that until March, we were the project of a European movement of popular initiative, whilst the Congress determined that we transformed ourselves properly in a movement. So our goals, missions, and strategies have the foundation of the years that brought us to the Congress in Warsaw and to this moment. I want to start with a bit of highlights from a political perspective that are important compass for what we have been doing after the Congress in Warsaw, but also not only for us as activists of this movement, but also as people of Europe. The most important update, in my opinion, is the meeting of the European Council that happened last week. It was a council that, as it often happens, had the responsibility of deciding on the future of Europe. And within that context, the complexities of the functioning of the European Union, as it usually happens, became evident. On one side, there was the positive decision of the status of candidate of a member state of the European Union for Ukraine, which in the context of the war of aggression of Russia, but also in the context of the European Union's security, safety, and evolution in a democratic direction, is a quite important decision to celebrate. And of course, I will come to this later, it's important for the type of actions that we started after the Congress. The second not decision of the Council was with regards to the follow-up of the Conference on the Future of Europe, a process, a democratic process that involves citizens that as a movement we really started to work on and to follow since our foundation in 2019. After the activities of the European Parliament to trigger a stronger follow-up to the Conference on the Future of Europe in the direction of a European Convention and the reforms of the European treaties, and the positive words of the European Commission, the Council didn't take a strong stand on the follow-up of the Conference on the Future of Europe, which is an issue both politically for the content of the recommendations that came from this interinstitutional process, but also from the perspective of a methodological perspective of the role of citizens, the type of deliberative processes that are put in place, and the importance that these processes have a follow-up, to not have citizens feeling that it's just an exercise and not a form of real democratic participation. The second important political highlight is the vote of the European Parliament on the Fit for 55 package on the climate issue. And Andrea Salimbeni already wrote an article on this and is gonna speak about this later, which is the evolution, the next step of the initiative that for 2 years we carried on for the carbon pricing. And the fact that the European Parliament didn't vote in favor of a lot of the measures based on carbon pricing systems encourages us to imagine how further we can bring the citizen mobilization on this measure that is a practical and concrete solution to the climate emergency, but that needs to be backed up because of the complexities of the voting systems. And then the third element is the fact that last weekend in Warsaw, I mean, in my opinion, this is a highlight. In Warsaw, there was the Pride March that was called as the Warsaw-Kyiv Pride March. There is a meaning in this, connecting the line of individual freedoms with the line of the European Union and the civil society in Poland, particularly for a democratic and individual rights-based European Union, which clashes with the roles of the governments. In the past 3 months with Eumans, we tried to concentrate our efforts after the Congress on an approach that was focused as much as possible on the construction or constructing the European network, the initiatives that we decided to focus our attention on, in particular the Ukraine Now initiative, was the core of our action because of the political urgency, but also of the political opportunity as a pan-European movement. So not only a EU citizens movement, but a pan-European movement to really try and bring the voice of the citizens in a debate that otherwise would have been only government's discussion or an institutional discussion. Our second focus was the Conference on the Future of Europe Evolution. We were able, thanks to the fact that we are part of the coalition Citizens Takeover Europe, to be in Strasbourg for the end of the Conference on the Future of Europe, but also for the Civil Society Summit organized by the Federalists, to join the voices of the civil society organization of the European Union that really want to push for the Conference of the Future of Europe for not being an isolated moment, but for being a real stepping stone for a more democratic European Union. The third front was mainly Italian, but it's connected, is the works on the citizen assemblies that Lorenzo is leading in Italy through the initiative Cittadine per il Clima, and to the different methodologies that can be applied for the goal of institutionalizing sortition-based citizen assemblies in Italy. Alongside this, Lorenzo and Marco organized and participated in more than 8 events, if I remember correctly, in Italian universities with this format called Let's Activate Democracy, Attiviamo la Democrazia, which is an important experiment of creating an education on participatory democracy that also has a political value for the goals that we as a movement try to pursue. And of course, on the Italian side, we cannot forget the fact that in Italy last week, there was the first case of assisted suicide in Italy. Marco, I'm sure, will maybe add something on this. I mentioned it in my introduction because, of course, not only the goal of end-of-life decisions as one of the ways how a person can self-determine him or herself is a goal of Eumans, but also the methodology of the political action that is a combination of participatory democracy, direct action, citizens and people that decide to bring their stories as a political case. It's part of the foundational elements of Eumans as a movement of popular and non-violent initiative. I want to share the other thing that we did in the past months was to activate one of the 2 new statute instruments that Eumans have after the Congress, which is the Eumans board, constituted by 7 of us, to help Marco and myself to analyze at least once a month how the movement is going, how we can improve, what we can do, and also have an operational and political analysis that helps us to be at the height of the ambitions that we have, but also aware of the size of our movement. I give you some numbers about Eumans just to give you an idea of where we are. Give me 1 second, because of course I don't have the numbers in front of me. So at the moment, our movement can rely on here we are, a database of 10,000 contacts that are native for Eumans, collected through the different initiatives. This is basically the audience that we can reach with direct email campaigns. 1/3 of these contacts has been created thanks to the activation for the Ukraine Now initiative. And almost 2,800 on the Stop Global Warming initiative. We have 91 members, 51 of which after the Congress. And we have a budget, we were able to collect basically with the direct donations and the subscriptions, 6,000 euros from Warsaw till now, which of course is, it's important to have the numbers in mind because Eumans at the moment exist a lot, basically because of the collaboration with Science for Democracy and Associazione Luca Coscioni. But of course, if we want to be really up for the challenges that we have in our statute and in our goals, we need to think on forms of fundraising for the membership, for the donations, but also for projects that can sustain our activities. I don't want to have these remarks too long, I already did. So I'm gonna read the draft of the proposed document for our discussion tonight. It's conceived to imagine humans in the next months, on one side with awareness of the human capacity that we have and the economical capacity that we have. But on the other side, it's a proposal of initiatives where we start to see the texture between the approach of humans and the practical actions that we carry on. And of course, it refers to the motion of Eumans Congress that is the foundation for this year for our work. So I'm gonna share the draft document here. I remind us that amendment can be suggested by members and activists registered on our platform. I'm gonna read it through because I think it completes my introduction, and then I will give the floor to Marco Cappato. It's a draft, but it will say, it says, the Eumans Members' Assembly on the 28th of June 2022 celebrates the decision of the European Council to vote in favor of the candidacy status of Ukraine as a member state. The decision to focus Eumans' efforts on the goal of Ukraine accession to the EU as a first step for a sustainable peace and an enlargement of the European Union based on rule of law and democracy was defined by the Eumans Congress in Warsaw. Eumans, activating the collaboration with the Ukrainian diaspora and the NGO Promote Ukraine, continued to fulfill its mission of being an opportunity for the people of Europe to directly act for the protection of their rights and the improvement of their lives. The Eumans Assembly recognized the importance of continuing the commitment of the movement in the context of the coalition Citizens Take Over Europe for an adequate follow-up of the Conference on the Future of Europe. In particular, the Assembly stands for the launch of a European Convention designed around citizens' involvement and supports the proposal that came through the randomly selected citizens' panels of the Conference on the Future of Europe, in order to increase the political legitimacy and dignity of participatory democracy instrument. Stemming from the Conference on the Future of Europe methodology, the continuous activation of these type of assemblies across Europe, last but not least, the possibility of a citizen assembly in Ireland on the topic of the legislation of cannabis, and the efforts in Italy on Cittadini per il Clima, the initiative for the institutionalization of randomly selected citizen assemblies in Italy for the activation of such an assembly on climate, Eumans members and activists decide to commit on. First, the planning of the first Italian self-organized citizen assembly in collaboration with other organizations and through the research of adequate funding. The collaboration with Member of Parliament and Member of the European Parliament to increase the collaboration with elected representatives for successful implementation of the assemblies. In addition to this, Eumans identify as a priority the relaunch of the initiative for the global carbon pricing in light of the vote of the European Parliament against some of the carbon pricing measures of the Fit for 55 package, and given the urgency of the ecological transition, also in light of the war of aggression of Russia against Ukraine. To guarantee the sustainability of the initiative in itself, the Eumans Members Assembly encouraged the creation of the first Eumans group on the topic of sustainability, with a first mandate on the promotion of the actions at COP27 for a global carbon pricing. The Eumans Member Assembly identified the European Citizen Initiative on Cannabis legalization as the key pillar of the future action of the movement for three main reasons. First, the recognition of anti-prohibitionism as a framework to pursue the mission goal of Eumans, freedom, democracy, and sustainability. Second, the identification of cannabis regulation as the next hostage of the national governments, and therefore the urgency of activating instruments of participatory democracy, instruments involving activists from all the EU in all the steps of the creation of such a campaign, clearly led by Eumans. The potential of the European Citizen Initiative for a successful collection of 1 million signatures. The Eumans Member Assembly recognized that the analysis that led to the launch of the EU Sign Day in 2021 needs to urgently be raised again. All actions aimed to increase the level of information on participatory democracy need to be pursued, with the goal of empowering citizens to use their own political rights and to transform participatory democracy instruments in impactful integration to electoral democracy. Therefore, the Eumans Member Assembly agrees in continue the works on the format Let's Activate Democracy to be presented in new universities on the model of the prototype initiatives carried out in Italian university, and verify the condition for a funded project on information on participatory democracy instruments. The Eumans Member Assembly recognized the urgency of working on the economical sustainability of the movement, inviting all the members and the activists to contribute to a fundraising strategy. It went long, I hope it's clear. It's in the chat. I leave the floor now to Marco Perduca, and in the meantime, please use the chat if you have comments to the order of the works or other practical things. So, I mean, we keep it informal, but let's try to use the chat while Marco speaks if you have something to say on the order of the works. And I welcome also Nicola Milanese, who is gonna take the floor after Marco Cappato on from the Citizens Takeover Europe Coalition perspective. Marco Cappato.
Thank you, Virginia. Can you hear me? Okay, I will speak in Italian if you agree. Ok, interverrò in italiano. Grazie Virginia anche per esserti fatta carico interamente della preparazione organizzativa e anche politica di questa assemblea. Come Virginia stessa ha spiegato, negli scorsi giorni, una settimana fa, adesso no, forse un attimo di più, c'è stato il primo caso di aiuto medico alla morte volontaria, il cosiddetto suicidio assistito, legale in Italia. E questo è stato realizzato da noi come Associazione Luca Coscioni, nel rispetto di una sentenza della Corte Costituzionale sul processo per il quale ero incriminato imputato per una pena fino a 12 anni di carcere, in 2 processi a dire il vero, e poi sono stato assolto proprio grazie a quella sentenza della Corte Costituzionale. A quasi 3 anni da quella sentenza, per la prima volta una persona ha potuto legalmente in Italia ottenere l'aiuto al suicidio. Anch'io credo, come Virginia, che questo sia per noi molto rilevante, sia per la dimensione internazionale del tema, ne ha parlato tutta la stampa mondiale, soprattutto in America Latina, ma anche in Asia, perché poi evidentemente che nel paese cattolico per eccellenza del Papa succeda una cosa del genere è una notizia significativa. Lo è anche come impulso, spinta per quello che stiamo cercando di fare con Carla Pisi, con Johannes Agdeberg, di trovare degli strumenti anche europei per sostenere il diritto all'autodeterminazione fino alla fine della vita. È quello che è accaduto importante anche da un punto di vista del metodo, come ricordava Virginia. Cioè, noi non vogliamo soltanto, come dire, raccogliere firme. Eumans non è change.org, non è un movimento di petizioni e di raccolta firme. Ovviamente usiamo gli strumenti delle petizioni al Parlamento europeo, delle ICE, delle iniziative dei cittadini europei, degli appelli pubblici, perché sono gli strumenti istituzionali molto deboli, molto fragili, che oggi ci vengono messi a disposizione per sollevare anche formalmente delle proposte. Ma è anche chiaro che nella condizione attuale delle democrazie nazionali e della democrazia europea, che esiste in modo molto limitato, dei risultati concreti si possono ottenere solo se al fianco della proposta istituzionale e della raccolta firme c'è una reale mobilitazione dei cittadini. in forme che possono essere quelle delle disobbedienze civili, delle iniziative giudiziarie e anche delle manifestazioni. Da questo punto di vista, penso sia un segnale molto positivo il fatto che per la prima volta dalla nascita di Eumans, oltre ad avere tenuto il congresso fondativo a Varsavia, e pur essendo i soci quasi esclusivamente per il momento italiani, l'obiettivo dell'adesione dell'Ucraina all'Unione Europea ha consentito, con la regia di Virginia, di creare partnership e contatti con le comunità ucraine in Europa, tanto da aver avuto in 14 città europee, alcune delle quali capitali europee, nello stesso giorno delle vere manifestazioni fisiche di cittadini europei che chiedevano l'adesione dell'Ucraina nell'Unione Europea. Questo è un passaggio molto importante ed è un primo, anche se limitato, ma è un primo salto di qualità nella nostra ambizione di essere di vivere come movimento civico paneuropeo. L'importanza di questo non è solo, come dire, per noi da un punto di vista interno organizzativo, ma è anche relativamente all'esito politico che avrà questo processo di adesione dell'Ucraina all'Unione Europea. Un opinionista molto attento ai temi europei in Italia, Sergio Fabbrini, ha scritto un articolo importante sul principale quotidiano economico italiano, sintetizzando ad oggi uno schieramento. Chi vuole ed è interessato alla politica di sicurezza e di difesa, i governi interessati alla politica estera, sicurezza e di difesa, vogliono l'Ucraina nell'Unione Europea per aumentare la stabilità del continente europeo. Da un punto di vista, quindi espandere il perimetro dell'Europa. Quei governi che invece sono preoccupati del livello di integrazione dell'Europa, quindi guardano all'interno, non all'esterno, e sono preoccupati dal comportamento del governo ungherese e del governo polacco, sono invece ostili o diffidenti nei confronti di ulteriori allargamenti dell'Unione Europea, perché hanno paura che questo vada a erodere la forza, la sovranità europea. Questo ragionamento è molto corretto, ma è un ragionamento che si ferma agli stati, ai governi. Servono i cittadini, il coinvolgimento diretto dei cittadini per cercare di spingere una logica diversa, che è quella di chi vuole l'allargamento, ma anche rafforzando la sovranità europea, che è esattamente uno dei risultati più chiari, più netti che viene fuori dalla conferenza per il futuro dell'Europa e anche dai panel di cittadini estratti a sorte. Quindi il punto non è gongolare per il fatto che bello, abbiamo fatto delle manifestazioni in 14 città, che è un dato interno, organizzativo, molto significativo. Il punto è che quell'elemento di cittadini che vogliono l'allargamento ma il rafforzamento dell'Unione Europea è esattamente l'elemento di dibattito che a livello dei governi non è sufficientemente posto in rilievo. Quello che accade in Polonia è l'esempio perfetto di questo problema, cioè un paese fondamentale nella risposta diciamo, a fianco dell'Ucraina in Europa, al tempo stesso un paese, un governo che disconosce e contesta apertamente la sovranità europea. Ecco perché il ruolo dei cittadini non è così una sorta di spezia, no? Di sale e di pepe che noi vorremmo mettere al dibattito politico, ma è un elemento essenziale per mutare i contenuti del dibattito e della proposta politica a livello europeo. È inutile che mi soffermi su quanto è importante che questo metodo sia allargato al tema dei cambiamenti climatici, che purtroppo da un certo punto di vista, mentre la pandemia e il Covid da una parte e la guerra di aggressione all'Ucraina dall'altra, possiamo sperare non abbiano una durata, diciamo così, nei decenni, anche se ovviamente sono già degli eventi con conseguenze di lungo termine. I cambiamenti climatici per definizione purtroppo siamo costretti a prevedere che ci accompagnino nell'arco dei decenni più che degli anni. E quindi è fondamentale l'aspetto che ha letto Virginia anche nel documento conclusivo, nella proposta di documento conclusivo, è quello che diceva un rilancio dell'iniziativa per spostare la pressione fiscale dalle persone alle emissioni di CO2 e non serve anche che dica perché come anche popolarità e comprensibilità la questione della cannabis e di una risposta europea per uscire da questa follia che i governi nazionali ancora tengono in piedi sia un elemento fondamentale e di potenziale crescita per Eumans. Quindi su questo appunto non mi dilungo oltre e termino qui l'intervento. Grazie.
Thank you, Marco Cappato. So we have a couple of people that we invited to speak, so we need to make sure they speak before 7. But I want to take only 1 second. If anyone has, as a member, has remarks on the order of the works or other more technical things, raise your hand. Okay. So the document is in the chat. It can be, amendment can be suggested until 8:30. If you want to speak, you can write in the chat or raise your hands and I will try to take notes. The assembly is an important moment for collective thinking, so don't be shy. I mark Andrea Salimbeni, but I would like to start to give the floor to Nicolò Milanese, who is the director of European Alternatives, founder and co-coordinator of the coalition Citizens Take Over Europe that the Eumans member here a lot of time. I really encourage Nicolò to be with us because I think his perspective from his analysis of the current framework, but also to tell us a bit more about how this coalition that we founded together, Citizens Take Over Europe, now that the conference on the future of Europe finished, what we are trying to build together. It's a characteristic that we saw with the pandemic, a more cooperative approach between civil society organizations, and I think a stronger awareness of the need of joint action and bring the different values. So I'm super happy to have Nicolò with us. The floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Virginia. I'm super happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation to your assembly. Congratulations on assembling and congratulations, Virginia, Marco, and everybody else on the growth and mobilization of Eumans over the past months. It's a pleasure to be associated in some way. I want to really follow on from what Virginia and Marco was saying with 3 kinds of points. So the first one is about the council meeting last week. Of course, the headlines were about giving candidacy status to Ukraine, but the European Council also considered the results of the Conference on the Future of Europe. I think they must have considered them for approximately 10 or maybe 15 seconds, because the conclusions that they came to are the briefest possible conclusions, essentially saying this Conference on the Future of Europe was a unique opportunity to listen to citizens. We're happy that it happened, and each of the European institutions will follow up. Full stop. Almost as if the European Council itself is not a European institution, and there's something of a pattern there that the European Council tends to escape from its obligations as a European institution under the treaties. It certainly seems to have escaped from its obligation, or at least what it said it was going to do, in terms of responding carefully to the citizens' recommendations coming out of the Conference on the Future of Europe. So there's reason for citizens to be concerned that they aren't being listened to by the heads of state. Many of the citizens who took part in the conference probably already had some doubts that whether they would really be listened to, but they might now feel those doubts reinforced. And the council also ignored the invitation from the parliament, indeed the voted resolution of the parliament, to initiate treaty change. The parliament was expecting some kind of response from the council. The council totally ignored this resolution, which was justified based on the results of the Conference on the Future of Europe, saying, look, these citizens have made recommendations. Some of the recommendations would require treaty change. European Council, why don't we start a convention? The European Council had nothing to say about this. And so we need to take stock of this situation as citizens, that despite an increasing number of people seeing the importance of the European Union evolving in the way that it's organized, involving citizens meaningfully in a discussion of its future, this is being blocked by the council. And that is a shame, both for reasons which Marco touched at. If enlargement is going to seriously happen in the coming years, then the treaties will need to change. And there's a question about how that should happen. But also for other reasons related to contemporary events. And again, things that Virginia and Marco referred to, that one could have hoped that as part of a treaty change process, the Charter of Fundamental Rights could be updated, extended to include things such as potentially the right to euthanasia, or indeed the right to abortion. But no, there's not going to be, at least for the time being, any institutional process in which those kinds of points and arguments can be made. And so what ought we to do about this? Well, Citizens Take Over Europe will continue to organize its independent processes of citizens' deliberation and participation, while calling on the institutions to do these things seriously. And so that concretely means a continuation of our Assemblies of Solidarity process and our transnational assemblies of the kind that we had in Palermo back last November, we had in Porto this April. That was the first point. The second point, which builds on the first point, is that the European Council, of course, gave candidacy status to Ukraine, and you're right to celebrate that in your resolution of this evening. I think you ought to also mention Moldova, which may not be in a war situation, but it's an important gesture, not unconnected to the situation, to extend candidacy status. But of course, and you may want to consider making some mention of the fact that not much has moved, well, nothing advanced when it came to other countries such as North Macedonia or Albania. And so the enlargement process is by no means fully reinforced. European Alternatives will organize its festival in Romania next year, the end of next year, and that will see a transnational assembly, which will no doubt have thematics of democracy, enlargement, borders, as its core. So that's an invitation where I hope that Eumans will come and join us in Romania. We're trying to decide exactly where in Romania, between Cluj, Bucharest, or Constanța. So that's the second point, festival in Romania. The third point is that before that, at the end of this year, we'll have a large transnational assembly in Bremen, so in Germany, relating fighting the climate crisis and mobilizing for workers' rights and conditions. And we think it's important to bring together those two issues, particularly at a moment of a dramatic cost of living crisis throughout the European Union. And so showing that addressing climate change and improving your living standard to have an affordable economy are not in conflict, but should go absolutely hand in hand. So that's a third invitation from European Alternatives and Citizens Takeover to join us in Bremen to talk about these climate and workers' rights and cost of living issues already this November. So I wanted to mention a few concrete opportunities to do things together, as well as kind of reinforcing the messages that Virginia and Marco began with, and wish you a great assembly. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Nicola Milanese. Thank you very much. So I see Andrea Salimbeni to speak, but before 7 we have 2 interventions that I want to happen, and then Andrea is the first in the list. So we have Alessandro Berti, that I think he needs to leave us soon, but I don't know if Lorenzo, you want to briefly introduce Alessandro and his speech. Unmuted, Lorenzo.
Yeah, Virginia, of course, but I just don't see him between the...
Yeah, I can see him, trust me.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Okay, so thank you, Virginia. Alessandro is one activist from Extinction Rebellion who's helping us in the campaign for citizen assemblies in Italy. And on the 30th of June, we will have this conference in the Italian Parliament, in which we will present a new strategy for the campaign Cittadini per il Clima, the proposal for the institution of citizen assembly in Italy, and in particular a climate citizen assembly in Italy. So thanks to Mr. Gregorio De Falco, who's also here, and thanks to a lot of activists and people who are helping us to organize this event, we can put a first step for the building of a proposal of a parliamentarian initiative on the institutionalization in Italy of citizen assemblies. So the initiative that Alessandro in particular will carry on is an hunger strike requesting the opening of the discussion of a petition that we presented in the Italian Parliament. Alessandro will explain more in detail the sense of his initiative, but of course we will support him and we will announce publicly this initiative with the presentation on the 30th. So Alessandro, the floor is yours.
Okay, in English, I suppose.
You can choose. If you want in Italian, we have the interpreters. So how you feel more comfortable.
Ok, sì, allora andrei in italiano, chiedo scusa a altre persone per velocità e sicurezza delle comunicazioni che voglio condividere con voi. Allora, ho delle richieste. La presentazione che ha fatto Lorenzo va molto bene, ha centrato. Ho delle richieste per chiedere direttamente appoggio a Eumans per invitare persone ad essere presenti per il sit-in del 30 alle 15:30, perché il mio sciopero partirà contestualmente al convegno che si tiene appunto nella sala in Palazzo Madama il 30 alle 15:30. All'interno ci sono 2 rappresentanti di Extinction Rebellion, Francesca e Sabina, che daranno la comunicazione, e all'esterno io inizierò uno sciopero della fame. Quindi la prima richiesta è quella di invitare persone che fanno parte di Eumans, ma anche di altre realtà e comitati, affinché il sit-in del 30 fuori da Palazzo Madama, quindi a Piazza della Minerva, sia nutrito, non ci sia solo io, ma si capisca subito a occhio che ci sono diverse persone e che siamo lì come Eumans, Politici per Caso, Extinction Rebellion e altre realtà che supportano questa proposta di legge. Quindi questa è la prima richiesta. Una seconda richiesta che ho dal gruppo che mi sta supportando per la preparazione, l'organizzazione e la conduzione di questo momento è sui giornalisti, per sapere quanti giornalisti si sono accreditati all'ingresso al convegno, per comunicarlo poi al nostro ufficio stampa. Una terza richiesta: se ci fosse qualcuno di Eumans che ha delle skill giornalistiche da affiancare al nostro gruppo di XR, molto volentieri, ne abbiamo bisogno, quindi se si possono mettere in contatto o in connessione queste persone, quindi persone con skill giornalistiche in Eumans con il nostro gruppo di XR. E poi ho un quarto punto, che è condividere uno schema di presenza e disponibilità di persone che possono essere lì in quel momento. Io mi sposterò poi dal giorno successivo, quindi dopo il 30, dal giorno successivo sarò in Piazza Navona, semplicemente perché è più affollata, è lì vicino. E stiamo organizzando appunto dei turni affinché ci siano sempre delle persone lì vicine, uno per dare supporto, due per eventualmente anche testimoniare, documentare eventuali sgomberi da parte della polizia, perché io sono in una posizione in cui non potrei essere a Roma in questo momento, però ecco, andare in questo e partecipare a andare avanti questo sciopero della fame legalmente, diciamo, non potrei farlo, però io sono lì, lo faccio, e anzi documentare se ci fosse uno sgombero, cioè un sollevamento della polizia che mi sposta da Piazza Navona mentre sto facendo uno sciopero della fame, secondo me sarebbe molto forte a livello di visibilità e anche a livello di dare una spinta alla raccolta di firme di iniziativa popolare che è ancora attiva sulla proposta di Politici per Caso. Quindi questi sono i punti principali che volevo portare con voi. Se ci sono delle risposte, o altrimenti le posso anche scrivere direttamente a Lorenzo successivamente per ottenere delle risposte, però ecco, mi piacerebbe almeno sapere se ci sono delle persone.
Scusa Lorenzo, scrivi poi a Lorenzo, perché questa è una riunione appunto di dibattito politico e gli obiettivi, poi sul piano organizzativo ci sentiamo a parte.
Ok, allora vado dritto all'obiettivo. L'obiettivo dello sciopero della fame è di ottenere un'indagine conoscitiva sul tema delle assemblee dei cittadini. Questo è il primo step della calendarizzazione della proposta di legge, che poi conduce a una discussione in Parlamento, e quindi l'obiettivo è avere via di questa indagine conoscitiva. Lo sciopero si interromperà quando ci sarà una data, una disponibilità a ottenere l'avvio di questa indagine conoscitiva. Questo al momento è il primo obiettivo che si è fissato. Si sta valutando contemporaneamente anche di aggiungere altri obiettivi o comunque di focalizzare, io per questo anche vorrei capire con voi, focalizzare meglio la richiesta, se invece potrebbe essere anche valida l'opportunità di richiedere un incontro con il presidente della Commissione Ambiente della Camera, che se non sbaglio dovrebbe essere Alessia Rotta, e la commissione si chiama Commissione Ambiente, Territorio e Lavori Pubblici, e questo sarebbe appunto l'obiettivo di avere un incontro dove io, assieme naturalmente a una delegazione di persone, possiamo andare e iniziare a avere degli obiettivi raggiunti di calendarizzazione, quantomeno di una presa di impegno della richiesta di proposta di legge sull'Assemblea dei cittadini. Ecco, questo è principalmente l'aspetto degli obiettivi. Se ci sono domande.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. So I see a few hands. Andrea Salimbeni. Then I would like to give the floor to Marco Perduca for some context on the initiative on cannabis. That is on cannabis, but it's way more than that from different political reasons. And then Lorenzo Mineo. So far, these are the speakers. So Andrea Salimbeni.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't switch on the camera because I have a very low battery and I'm getting back home from this conference. I am so sorry if I'll be so very quick. The first point is the carbon pricing. The activity on carbon pricing that we started with Stop Global Warming is still alive, and the activity is now focused on calling for the participation of national governments, of European, but also any national government, to support our appeal on global carbon pricing. That means asking for the establishment of a global carbon pricing and asking in particular United Nations during the next COP27 in Egypt to discuss and to put a first big stone on the development of a global carbon pricing agreement between countries of United Nations, so that to really make a step forward towards a sustainable economy not based on extractive resources. Our request is made stronger after the rejection by the Parliament of the proposal of the Commission to make the European carbon pricing system more efficient than now, which is not efficient. And hopefully we will manage to involve some countries that could bring our voice during the COP27. Another point is important to underline. Last 22nd of June, the Parliament approved that carbon pricing will be applied to the incinerators. So very good news from 2026, apart from the fact that it could be too late, but it is important now to also to focus the attention on avoiding that our developed countries export their waste in less developed countries, as we are already doing partially, and that we risk that we will intensify this export of waste, which is a market, a big market, that we need to obstacle as soon as we can. So these are the 2 points. In addition to that, I just want to don't have batteries probably. Just want to give my support to the Citizens Assembly application. for environment. And unfortunately, I won't be available on the 30th because I will be still here in Copenhagen. But hopefully, I can participate in the future to this initiative.
Thank you very much, Andrea Salimbeni. So next speakers are Marco Perduca from Associazione Luca Coscioni and Science for Democracy for a bit of a framework for the European Citizen Initiative on cannabis and anything else that he wants to say since he's Marco Perduca. And then Lorenzo Mineo, and then we have Senator Gregorio De Falco again on the topic of citizen assemblies and the collaboration with the Italian Parliament. But first of all, Marco Perduca.
Thank you, Virginia. Good evening, everybody. I also have the same battery situation of Andrea, so I apologize for not turning on the video. Before saying a few things about the European Citizens Initiative on cannabis, I would like to say two things about nonviolence. Because Eumans is also dedicated to promoting participatory instruments and participatory democracy also through nonviolence. We have all been young and we have always liked to be also poetically very strong in a way. But what we are talking about political nonviolence and not nonviolence. So the stress should be put both on the political as much as on the nonviolent components of this set of activities that fall within the repertoire of this possibility of participating in a different way to the political debate and the political decision-making process. From what I heard, I'm not sure that there has been enough stress on the political aspect, meaning identifying objectives and then organizing around them a set of activities that in the end may also result in nonviolence, and not at the very beginning. This is because nonviolence has a reputation as something that is not necessarily always the last resort, but it's something that needs to be used with the necessary wisdom that in fact strengthen the instruments of nonviolence. It's not just a pose or a cosmetic action. So I would caution everybody who is for the first time, perhaps, and everybody is always welcome to do whatever they want as long as they don't harm anybody else, to take into consideration these elements. And because Eumans is also can also reach out to experts in nonviolence, not that nonviolence is taught, but it's not a subject for studies. Perhaps another meeting should also be dedicated to make a list of this repertoire and see who has done what, why, and what were the final results, because there are risks, I think, attached to some ill-conceived activities. Speaking of ill-conceived activities, this issue of preparing a draft text for a European Citizens Initiative on cannabis has been going on now for 3.5 years. Sometimes, well, we might have been ready at the beginning of 2020, but of course the pandemic disrupted everybody's plan. We have since April reorganized the groups that had manifested their interest in these activities, and then others that have joined us in a first webinar on the 20th of April and a second a few days ago, where we have not only known more people, more groups, but we have also gathered some proposals, criticism, and I think antipathy for the instrument. So we will need to take an extra couple of months to digest what we've heard. Some of the suggestions were very, very helpful. And we are now redrafting the second or third draft of the initiative because as much as we love the plant of cannabis, we love more human rights. And the lack of a specific mention of human rights in the draft, I think, was well noted, and we have to work on that. I say this because yesterday the United Nations have published the World Drug Report with data coming from 2020. And they have a very direct attack against cannabis. They say that in the places where cannabis has been legalized, there has been an increase in use, of course, and there has been an increase in people that have developed a problematic use after having smoked or inhaled or eaten the plant. So we have to take that criticism into consideration and use it as an additional weapon, so to speak, to shoot the right bullet at the right moment. The topic is very known, is very liked. It's at the center of a variety of national activities. We heard them on the 23rd in a webinar. Italy tomorrow will, for the second time in the history of the Italian Republic, have an entire debate dedicated to the possibility of regulating domestic growing or for plants and halving the penalties for also dealing. So there is something going on also in a country that is not necessarily renowned for progressive politics like Italy. But we have to balance this love for the plant also with at least two other aspects that revolve around cannabis. One is the industrial part. And when I say industrial, I don't mean big industries or big companies. I mean everybody that can become overnight, especially if they like agriculture, small or medium entrepreneurs to produce a plant that contains CBD and not THC, but in that product it can be also used not only for food, but also for architecture. So there is a variety of activities around the same plant that we know is the same plant that may be included also, perhaps with not as the biggest focus of the initiative, but as a preoccupation when we draft the third version of our document. And certainly there is now the most popular use of cannabis in the world is the therapeutic use. There are laws at the national level. Italy has a 15-year-old law that everybody says is a very good law, but when it comes to implementing that law, we have seen a lot of problems arising. Some of them are linked to very strict rules within the European Union that have, in a way, had a negative impact at the national level for cannabis regulations. Others are because we are not respecting the fact that we are a common market. So if something is produced and sold legally in a member state, it can be imported without any restriction in another member state. And this is not happening when it comes to therapeutic cannabis. And so we have to balance what is there already, and there's a directive on novel food for industrial health, but what is not there, but it's happening in other EU fora, like the European Court of Justice, when it comes to not prohibiting something that is produced legally in another member state. And then there's a third level, which concerns penalties. In 2004, and with this I will conclude, the Home and Justice Affairs meeting of the European Council decided that despite the fact that they shouldn't be treated like hard drugs, cannabis personal use should also be penalized in a way. They don't say it has to be penalized through criminal law, but it has to be in a way controlled. 12 years after that, in 2016, the United Nations General Assembly had a very long declaration that used the key phrase human rights-centered policies on drugs, because it was evident, and still unfortunately is evident, that the war on drugs, despite not being called like that, is still ongoing and has violated human rights of millions, if not billions of people at all levels, consumers, growers, people that live in countries where the stuff is trafficked. So we have to balance the decision of 2004 with the decision of 2016 taken at the global level at the UN Special Session on Drugs, and then insert the last development that happened 2 years ago. The United Nations has taken cannabis away from Schedule 4 of the 1961 Convention because they recognize that it's not as dangerous as it used to be. That's, I mean, anybody can comment on this decision, but it's certainly, they recognize the therapeutic value, but also the non-dangerous aspect of the plant. So having put all these ingredients together, I think we can cook a different text. Of course, the moment in which we're ready, and we're looking at the end of September, early October, we will have to go back not only to Eumans, which I think is the organization spearheading the whole thing, but also to the other groups, because there may be more than 7 committees active. We will have to finalize a common strategy at the continental level and then the national strategies. But this is something that, in that case, yes, it's a political objective, very, very clear. Also, targeting institutions, we can also go back and talk about disobediences of different kinds that has already happened. Not necessarily as successful as all over the continent, but we can talk about that later. So we're now in a phase in which, and we can share the document, I think, in a couple of weeks, of finalizing the 3rd draft for the final comments. And then over the summer, when everybody this time will not be engaged in collecting signatures, we will think about it once again. And in September, we will hopefully have the final version. Thank you for your time. And I apologize for the background noise.
Thank you, Marco Perduca, for the context and also the help in showing, as we try to do in the Congress, how cannabis is not only a plant, but it's a human rights issue, an economical issue, an ecological issue, and a lot of other elements. Before giving the floor to Lorenzo and then Gregorio De Falco and then Sibilla, I want to mention an important thing of why the European Citizen Initiative on Cannabis is central in the document. It's not impossible to reach 1 million signatures on a European Citizen Initiative on cannabis. At the same time, we need, as a movement that activates this instrument and want to be successful in activating these instruments, we need to learn from what we learned with stopglobalwarming.eu, which was important as a first strategy, and we see already the value in that, but also in how the initiative is conceived. The difference between Eumans 3 years ago and now is that that was our Stop Global Warming was our first move. We had an idea, we implemented, and we used that to connect with other people, groups, and organizations. The difference now is that thanks to the history of anti-prohibitionism in Europe, but also the small bit of history that Eumans did, now it's very important that we build this European Citizen Initiative together with those who are going to be the partners of the initiative. So this phase of the text that Marco described, this back and forth, these 2 webinars that we did are part of an effort that we need to do over the summer and in the next months to be sure that the potential is at its full capacity when we launch the European Citizen Initiative, and that we have the presence in the 7 member states, the connections, the credibility, and so forth and so on. So these months are already part of the mobilization for cannabis. So one thing is the formal process of the initiative, and one thing is how we arrive to the formal process, which then open up for the 1 million signatures for other initiatives, etc. I wanted to highlight this methodology because it's essential for this new wave of humans with this instrument, and requires a lot of concentration efforts and fundraising. So we need to approach this with awareness. Lorenzo Mineo, then Senator Gregorio De Falco, and Sibilla Barbieri. And if someone else wants to speak, just raise your hand or write it in the comments. Lorenzo.
Grazie, io andrò in italiano anche perché parto dal rispondere ad alcune questioni di Alessandro, ma poi vorrei anche fare delle considerazioni più generali su Eumans. Partendo da alcuni interrogativi che sollevava Alessandro, io spiego anche così agli altri iscritti a Eumans che ci stanno ascoltando il senso un po' dell'iniziativa che che abbiamo deciso di lanciare con questa conferenza del 30 giugno al Senato, che è anche il senso della cocciutaggine, di continuare a trovarci su un tema come quello delle assemblee dei cittadini, dove nonostante anche la stessa Europa abbia fatto delle innovazioni importantissime con la conferenza sul futuro dell'Europa, l'Italia sia un paese dove lo strumento della democrazia deliberativa e delle assemblee dei cittadini ancora non ha preso piede, e noi portiamo avanti questo tema effettivamente da anni, provandole tutte per riuscire a portarlo dentro le istituzioni, e quindi facciamo un po' quello che fanno i cittadini quando è necessario sostituirsi allo Stato. Chiediamo da anni l'istituzione di questo strumento, l'abbiamo fatto attraverso una proposta di legge di iniziativa popolare che continua comunque ad essere aperta, ma lo facciamo adesso anche entrando nel cuore delle istituzioni e quindi chiedendo a un gruppo trasversale di parlamentari di attivarsi e di presentare questa proposta di legge. In altri paesi ci ha pensato direttamente il governo o il Parlamento, adesso siamo noi invece che lo chiediamo e che ci attiviamo. E ecco, il senso dell'iniziativa di Alessandro è quello di imprimere in qualche modo una scossa, velocizzare questo processo, quindi la sua iniziativa non violenta di sciopero della fame è rivolta direttamente poi ai presidenti che citava lui della Commissione Ambiente o della Commissione Affari Costituzionali, che sono quelli che possono in qualche modo, ecco, con una richiesta innanzitutto di incontro come prima tappa e poi con l'apertura di una vera e propria indagine conoscitiva, possono in qualche modo dare seguito a quella che è una petizione che abbiamo depositato alle Camere che ha precisamente questo obiettivo, quindi quello per il Parlamento italiano di adottare una legge per istituire le assemblee dei cittadini e di convocare la prima di questi sui temi della crisi climatica e della politica energetica. Quindi questo per raccontare a tutti l'iniziativa di giovedì alle 15:30 alla sala capitolare del Senato e rispondo su questo anche Alessandro con anche il sit-in che si terrà fuori e che sarebbe bello e meglio forse se c'è modo di farlo dopo al termine del convegno, perché in questo modo ci diventa anche più facile aiutare a portare delle persone, no? Non avendo banalmente il dono dell'ubiquità, o si sta dentro o si sta fuori, ma invece uscendo potremmo dare supporto all'iniziativa di piazza che citava prima Alessandro. Ma invece più in generale su Eumans, senza fare in realtà un salto pindarico, perché ecco, mi vorrei soffermare proprio su questa nostra caratteristica, che è quella di portare avanti singole campagne, singoli obiettivi, che è sicuramente una strategia necessaria che è la nostra forza, quella di riuscire a concentrarsi su obiettivi anche di grande ambizione, portare il carbon pricing alla COP27, istituire le assemblee dei cittadini in Italia, ma anche rafforzarle a livello europeo, la vorremmo permanente, come ha chiesto la conferenza sul futuro dell'Europa, e ancora la questione della cannabis e dell'antiproibizionismo transnazionale. Per quanto grandi siano questi obiettivi, chiaramente non sono mai esaustivi rispetto all'impronta del cambiamento che vorremmo realizzare in nome della democrazia e della sostenibilità, come sono gli obiettivi del nostro statuto. E quindi non credo che in questo debba esserci una contraddizione in qualche modo, no? Nell'approccio basato su singole campagne, senza perdere però la visione globale. E quindi anche, lo dico adesso guardando un po', no? L'Assemblea ci dà l'occasione anche per chi come me, come Virginia, poi nel quotidiano segue le attività di Eumans, di guardarle anche con un po' di distanza da iscritti, che dà più lucidità, e credo che un messaggio importante anche per tutti noi sia che, per quanto centrali siano le nostre iniziative, le nostre battaglie, l'ambizione per la crescita di Eumans debba essere anche quello di trovare nuovi attivatori di altre iniziative, altre battaglie. Noi tante volte ne citiamo, ecco, adesso in questi giorni che l'attualità politica ci ricorda la questione dell'aborto, il diritto e i diritti riproduttivi, sicuramente noi avevamo anche detto in Europa la questione del far diventare l'aborto un diritto fondamentale e metterlo nella Carta di Nizza, che era stato il discorso anche di Emmanuel Macron, se non sbaglio, al momento dell'insediamento della presidenza francese del Consiglio d'Europa. Cito questo esempio per dire: le battaglie saranno sempre tali e tanti che riuscire a trovare nei 92 iscritti che siamo la forza per portarle avanti tutte è impossibile, ma nell'ambizione di crescita che il congresso di Varsavia ha cominciato a porre le basi, probabilmente l'obiettivo deve essere proprio quello, riuscire a trovare anche le nuove battaglie che altri attivatori di democrazia possono realizzare. Credo che poi l'investimento nella Polonia sia veramente indovinato anche per questa ragione, proprio sul tema dei diritti riproduttivi potrebbe essere da lì che arrivano nuove forze e nuove energie.
Thank you, Lorenzo. To respect the tradition of always pinging Lorenzo, sexual and reproductive rights, because sex is not only for reproduction, and it's important to keep this in mind. But thank you, Lorenzo Mineo. The next, and thank you very much, really. The next speaker on stage, thanks to the work of Lorenzo, is a senator of the Italian Republic, is Senator Gregorio De Falco. And I think his speech is very important for two reasons. First of all, because we always said that the approach of Eumans to participatory democracy is a form of collaboration and cooperation with those that are elected in the institutions. And what we are trying to do now with the initiative for the institutionalization of citizen assembly is exactly working on this bridge and to see what can be done in the parliament to support the civic wave that Alessandro represents, the other organization of the coalition Politici per Casa, and so forth and so on. So I'm very happy to give the floor to Senator De Falco to tell us how he ended up with an interest on citizen assemblies, and also what are the plans within the Italian Senate and somehow in the Italian Parliament for this goal. And thank you for being with us.
Grazie a voi, buonasera, grazie a voi per avermi invitato. Io ritengo che la situazione nel Parlamento italiano sia alquanto desolante, per la verità. Non lo posso nascondere questo. Non posso nascondere però che altrettanto importante può essere l'apporto dell'integrazione che può venire dalle assemblee alla democrazia rappresentativa. In questo momento la democrazia rappresentativa, in Italia in particolare, ma credo mi sembra di capire un po' anche negli altri paesi, è piuttosto asfittica e si assiste in effetti anche a un vero e proprio, diciamo, una vera e propria commistione tra democrazie e autarchie. In questo periodo difficilmente si può parlare in Italia di democrazia rappresentativa e quindi di democrazia tout court. Moltissime circostanze fanno invece temere che ci sia una vera e propria involuzione del senso democratico, probabilmente basato sul fatto che mano a mano i cittadini si sono sempre più allontanati dalla partecipazione politica, perché effettivamente poco e male risponde la politica alle esigenze dei cittadini. Allora il significato che possono assumere le assemblee rispetto alla democrazia rappresentativa è quello di dare nuova linfa e una nuova forza. Sembra che apparentemente potrebbe sembrare che sia una sorta di concorrenza tra la democrazia rappresentativa e una democrazia sostanzialmente consultiva, però partecipata dai cittadini. In realtà non è così. In realtà è proprio il modo per ravvicinare la gente, la popolazione, alla politica. Ma soprattutto, più che alla politica, alle istituzioni, cioè alla credibilità delle istituzioni. Ecco, la mia modestissima funzione, non avendo un partito di riferimento peraltro, non può essere altro che quello di fare da sponda a iniziative come questa, perché se occorre e se riesco, con il vostro aiuto chiaramente, vorrei presentare un disegno di legge in questo senso. Non tanto per avere la prima firma su un disegno di legge che probabilmente è anche intelligenza democratica, ma perché possa essere portato all'interno del palazzo, all'interno del Senato nel mio caso, un progetto popolare che altrimenti, vi dico soltanto questo, nel sito del Senato non è nemmeno indicizzato la petizione, per cui il contenuto della petizione non può essere nota nemmeno ai senatori. Quando mai potrà essere calendarizzato un atto che non è noto? Ecco, allora almeno lo portiamo all'interno. Ne faccio un disegno di legge, cerco di condividerlo con i colleghi, sarà difficilissimo, anche se mi riferisco, se vado a riferirmi, se li ricerco, gli ex colleghi del Movimento 5 Stelle che facevano della democrazia diretta una loro bandiera. Sarà difficilissimo, ma ci proviamo. Ecco. Sentivo interessantissimi i vari elementi, i vari diritti umani, aborto, ambiente, cannabis, i vari temi concreti che sono giustamente, tatticamente utilizzati come sistemi per far entrare il discorso. Però è molto importante, secondo me, proprio l'istituzionalizzazione della partecipazione delle assemblee, che poi, attenzione, perché noi stiamo andando, particolarmente in Italia, verso lo spossessamento vero e proprio della potestà legislativa. Già sta avvenendo dal 1996, diciamo, che il governo ha tolto sostanzialmente e il Parlamento ha abdicato rispetto alla potestà legislativa in capo alle Camere. Ma adesso, con il progetto di autonomia differenziata che è stato inserito nel 2001 nell'articolo 116 della Costituzione, in Italia andremo sempre più verso la creazione di regioni-Stato dotate di potestà legislativa autonoma, nelle quali i vari consigli regionali conteranno poco e niente. Conterà invece soltanto il presidente della regione, che già chiama se stesso oggi governatore, e parlerà soltanto, interloquirà soltanto con gli altri governatori e con il governo. Questo è il progetto. Il progetto è fare dello Stato la bad company. Lo Stato con il suo Parlamento saranno soltanto la bad company, detentori di tutte le passività, mentre rimarranno alle regioni le risorse che le regioni producono sostanzialmente, le entrate finanziarie che sono generate nel territorio regionale. Ecco che naturalmente queste iniziative promanano dal Veneto, dalla Lombardia e dall'Emilia Romagna in Italia. 3 regioni che hanno, diciamo così, una quota circa di produzione del reddito che equivale circa a 200 miliardi su 750 miliardi di bilancio annuale dello Stato. In questo modo, non soltanto sotto il profilo istituzionale si priverà lo Stato della facoltà, del dovere, anzi, meglio dire, di riconoscere a tutti i pari diritti, almeno formalmente, ma si arriverà poi all'impossibilità per lo Stato di far fronte alle esigenze dei cittadini e quindi alle esigenze di perequazione dei territori più svantaggiati e delle aree dei territori più svantaggiati che ci sono anche nei territori, nelle regioni più industrializzate. Ecco perché io credo che sia assolutamente indispensabile rivitalizzare la democrazia rappresentativa attraverso la partecipazione dei cittadini che queste assemblee possono consentire. Ecco, non vi voglio togliere altro tempo e sono qui a disposizione. Grazie. Soltanto per quanto riguarda dal punto di vista organizzativo, ancora una piccolissima cosa, cioè il 30, confermo, non è dinanzi a Palazzo Madama, non è Palazzo Madama la sede, ma è Palazzo della Minerva, e quindi dinanzi a quella che viene denominata la biblioteca. Sarà difficile che le forze dell'ordine consentano la manifestazione, quindi forse sarebbe da accogliere la proposta che ho appena sentito da Lorenzo Mineo di farla quando siamo fuori anche noi. Grazie.
Thank you, Senator De Falco, because your speech was, it seems you followed our works for the past 3 years, and this idea that we cooperate together to improve democracy as a whole. So not just a part of it is part of the mission that we have as a movement. So thank you very much. Okay, among the invited speakers, we should be joined soon by Oksana Bulda from the Ukrainian community here in Brussels. But in the meantime, we have Sibilla Barbieri, who is a Eumans member and a member of the Eumans board. And I invite everyone to not be shy and to share your thoughts. The assembly and doing a quarterly assembly is an important commitment for us, and it's to be sure that there is an opportunity where we can put together our collective intelligence and the different forms of support that humans need. So Sibilla.
Allora, intanto ringrazio il senatore De Falco che ha centrato qualche cosa di fondamentale, che è il fatto che la base elettorale si sta sottraendo, abbiamo visto anche il livello di astensionismo, e che bisogna rivitalizzarla con qualche cosa che non sia una presa in giro, ma che sia veramente un coinvolgimento serio. Detto questo, stavo riflettendo su come sviluppare le ormai, dal mio punto di vista, molto centrali, considerando la debolezza degli altri strumenti che ci sono stati dati e anche la caduta del referendum, come diceva giustamente, le petizioni che nessuno vede, invece di come potenziare le assemblee dei cittadini. E stavo pensando a un'idea di sistematizzare tutta una serie di lavori che noi stiamo portando in atto. Sistematizzare dando un nome e un cognome ad un progetto europeo. Un progetto europeo che abbia come laboratorio l'Italia. Perché? Perché sistematizzarlo dandogli un nome? Perché secondo me, perdonatemi, ma ha la sua importanza, le ricerche di finanziamenti, che in questo caso sono finanziamenti per qualche cosa che ha una grande urgenza democratica, secondo me sarebbero più facili se questo progetto avesse una struttura. Intendo dire che se noi ipotizziamo delle assemblee dei cittadini che siano in parte tra cittadini ed esperti, in parte tra cittadini che invitano i parlamentari a dibattere, una volta dibattuto loro il tema. I temi ovviamente sono quelli che abbiamo sentito, cioè il clima, i diritti in Europa, cioè il fatto che esista un livello comune di diritti in Europa e quello di cui parlava Marco, cioè il concetto del confine e sicurezza. Che intendiamo per confine e sicurezza in Europa? E che cosa sentono i cittadini su questo? Queste sarebbero delle assemblee, però queste assemblee potrebbero essere una preparazione ad una sorta di momento che sia come una sorta di camera dei cittadini, un momento che sia praticamente rappresentativo di che cosa potrebbe essere una Camera dei cittadini, attraverso appunto un percorso che implica anche l'incremento dell'informazione sulla democrazia partecipativa, cioè l'Eusign Day, e che implichi anche lo sviluppo nelle università dell'educazione alla partecipazione. Cioè tutte queste cose sono parte di un'unica visione, di un'unica parte, quindi lo sviluppo dei giovani, di come si approcciano alla democrazia, l'educazione alle persone, diciamo di un altro tipo, ad esercitare una partecipazione, ad informarsi, a diventare cittadini consapevoli, eccetera, su dei temi che diventano però cruciali, importanti, che sono profondamente sentiti e che sono dei temi urgenti. E questo per arrivare un giorno a fare una rappresentazione di una Camera dei cittadini, con l'invito ai politici sensibili su questo a seguire il processo e a partecipare, perché appunto siamo tutti nella stessa barca. Ok, finito.
Thank you, Sibilla. Next person is Francesco Galtieri, I think the first member after the Eumans Congress, basically. So welcome, Francesco.
Thanks a lot, Virginia, and good evening, everyone. So I just had three reflections to share. One is to do with the connection and the purpose of mobilization that we are thinking about, and of course, one is mobilizing around a specific cause or a specific campaign. At the same time, what I'm observing, also dealing with issues related to peace building and promoting peace in almost hopeless countries at this stage, is that unless we are able to create a push from the public opinion that goes beyond those who get committed or engaged through a campaign, it's very hard to get to that point of pressure that goes beyond the startup energy. So, for example, collecting enough signature for a campaign or for a European citizen initiative is the startup that then needs to lead to a pressure put by the public opinion on the Commission to debate and decide on that European initiative. So what I'm observing is that even where these campaigns of citizens mobilization have been successful in reaching the critical mass to activate themselves and bring an instance to the attention of an institution or the responsible decision makers, what has been missing was then bringing that into a public opinion pressure beyond those who already believe, those who already support. I think that in Italy, we have gone and we are going closer and closer through Eutanasia Legale, because it touches also the emotional side, not only the rational arguments or the rational elements supporting the rights and the everything that we know is right and the reason why we are doing it, but it also touches on people's lives. So I'm wondering to which extent this element of already anticipating beyond the mobilization what will take to emotionally engage the public opinion on something will need to be considered. The second reflection is around what Senator De Falco was saying before, right? Is that people got away from politics. I think it's actually the way around. Because the moment a representative democracy, and we take the example of Italy, a representative democracy has the core of its representation into parliament, but parliament is not representing people, starting from the activities of the bulk of members of parliament who are not connected with their constituencies and their communities, but rather pursue initiatives that can bring visibility or that stand chances to be successful in a given period of time, in terms of collecting the right support from other members of parliament. So the engine of the parliamentary activity is often not related to the representation of the constituencies. And so the moment the main instance that should represent the mechanic of representative democracy fails people, it creates a level of disappointment that makes other initiatives around representative democracy antagonistic rather than cooperative, as Virginia, you were mentioning before. So while the intention is to cooperate, when we try to cooperate with the dysfunctional representative instance, there is something that is missing, like two pieces of puzzle that do not match. So I'm wondering to which extent, in addition or to accompany the support to the legislative proposal that Senator De Falco will bring, we can actually create a coalition of parliamentarians who believe into their responsibility of connect to constituencies. And so show an example by trying to reach a critical mass, because I also know a few individual members of parliament who are representing their constituencies and so on. But that doesn't look in the eyes of the public opinion as a critical mass of members of parliament who go back to their constituencies regularly by engaging them, not only going back physically, by engaging them in what the constituencies want rather than trying to create consensus on what the parliamentarian is trying to promote. So looking at something that accompanies and shows the example of how a dysfunctioning institution may become functional if only members of parliament modeled a certain type of behavior, could also help identify provide an example on how that could work. The last point I wanted to raise, and this is more of a question for you all, and particularly Lorenzo and the people who are working specifically now on the People Assembly, the Citizen Assembly, is whether you have been following a little bit how the public debates around infrastructures have been going around Italy, because that law was introduced a few years ago, 2016, I think, and then was implemented as 2018, and now they've become an instrument for a number of Generation EU investments, the infrastructural investment. Those are people assemblies, basically. It's when an infrastructure is brought into a public debate. Probably they do not function as they are meant to function. From one side, because institutions don't know what it means to facilitate a citizen assembly around the implementation, the design and implementation of an infrastructure. But from the other side is because citizens, beyond the activists who have a reflex to participate, probably do not have all the instruments that are necessary to try and influence the design of, for example, of an infrastructure through a public debate. So I'm wondering to which extent, and you know, of course, there are actors, you have a little bit observed, drawn lessons, checked what is functioning, what is not, what are the seeds that can blossom, if somehow maybe also humans had to help a couple of those to succeed more than they've been actually doing. Also because the realization of infrastructure, as we know, has a major impact on communities. Economic impact in terms of access to services. It has an impact on the promotion of the rule of law and legality in certain territories. So even if those are imperfect tools, are probably the smallest unit at present of citizens' engagement in a public debate about decision-making on the investment of public resources. So they have a lot of the elements that we would like to see scaled into the way Italian institutions involve citizens in decision-making. So just out of curiosity, being now, having been far away for the past already 3.5 years from Italy, again, wondering what observations you might have had on that specific instrument. Over to you, Bess.
Thank you very much, Francesco Galtieri. So I don't see anyone that is in list for speaking, so please do so. And I don't know if Lorenzo maybe has a specific reply on the last point.
See, I will try to be quick. Basically, the public debate is an historical instrument of participatory democracy born in France, and some of the professors that will be at the event on the 3rd of July, Stefano Soggiu, but also, for instance, Rodolfo Levansky, they always criticized this kind of instrument because it's a lot more weak in respect of the citizen assembly, in particular because there is no random selection, and so it's very easy to see that those who are against, for instance, the construction of a building, since we are talking about infrastructure, and this is in the Italian legislation on infrastructure, they are very keen to be the majority in this kind of debate that is less democratic than a citizen assembly guarantee because of the random selection. So we didn't deepen that much the public debate in the Italian legislation, also because of this judgment that some of us and our professor had on the topic. But of course, we are open to, in particular, if with your help, Francesco, maybe you know better about the Italian legislation on public debate, maybe we can see how to do something also with this instrument. It's just that it's not exactly the same campaign of the institutionalization of a citizen assembly based on random selection.
Thank you, Lorenzo Mineo. Quick update on the agenda. At 8, we will be joined by Oksana Bulda from Promote Ukraine for some reflections on the joint actions that we've organized, but also with some updates on how Ukraine is working on the now that has the candidate status, and for one of the urgent issues that relates to that, which is the rule of law and democracy element, of course, of this accession and enlargement of the European Union. So her she was meant to join a bit later, but I tried to push her to join earlier. So she'll be with us at 8. So I encourage everyone to have your say, even if it's just for a comment, your perspective on the document, questions. I mean, we are not a mass movement yet, so we can have this type of. Senator De Falco as a reaction.
Soltanto per specificare che mi farebbe piacere innanzitutto cercare di ottenere una interlocuzione con la senatrice Vilma Moronese, cioè la Presidente della Commissione Agricoltura. La Presidente della Commissione Ambiente, perdono. Della Commissione Ambiente, in modo tale da poterla mettere in relazione con voi e affinché possa occuparsi di uno dei punti specifici che avete menzionato. D'altra parte, ecco, per il momento è l'unico contatto che riesco a immaginare. Contemporaneamente cercherò di capire se e quali colleghi ci possono essere, quali altri parlamentari, come veniva detto dall'intervento precedente di Galtieri, quali altri parlamentari possono essere, diciamo così, possono farsi parte dirigente in questa battaglia. Io non credo, ma è probabilmente pessimismo, che ce ne siano molti, ma li cerchiamo uno per uno, vediamo un po'. Li abbiamo invitati anche a partecipare all'Assemblea del Trento, ovviamente. E già questo potrebbe essere indicativo, la loro presenza potrebbe essere di buon auspicio, la presenza di qualcuno di loro almeno. Ecco, io sì, vi metterò in contatto con la Moronese, che mi sembra possa essere persona sensibile a queste tematiche ed è Presidente della Commissione Ambiente.
Thank you. Okay, don't make me call you out. Don't be shy. Say something.
But Virginia, maybe I seize the opportunity. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I seize the opportunity to underscore an important, what I think is an important point as a context, as a scenario. In the first weeks of the war of aggression of Putin in Ukraine, I think that we have experienced a sort of conscience of, in a way of democratic conscience, the so-called democratic West, which is of course a very gross definition, because it includes countries which are not from the West, but there was the feeling that for the first time after years or even decades, maybe after the Gulf War, governments and public opinion, at least in Europe and in maybe not only in Europe, became aware of the difference between living in a more or less democratic country, or in a country with the ambition of being democratic, and living in an autocratic country, and openly autocratic country, as in Russia, but even in China. I have the feeling that this energy created around the mission of democracy, it risks to vanish week after week. And what Niccolò Milanese said about the lack of discussion and the lack of reactions, not mentioning the lack of results in listening to the conference of the future on the future of Europe is really worrisome, because we are not talking just about a resolution from the European Parliament. We are talking about 1 year long effort of conferences, meetings, citizen assemblies, institutional meetings, parliamentary debate, with the huge dissipation of energy in a way, or at least a huge effort, even with the technological side, with the creation of a platform, an open platform of discussion. So I think that in democracy, there is nothing worse than illusion and delusion. It's very difficult to recover from a delusion. If we are not able, together with Citizens Take Over Europe coalition, to put the conference on the future of Europe results alive, it would be almost impossible in 2 years' time or in 3 years' time going back to the citizen and saying to them again, "Oh, yes, we want to listen to you." This is a kind of operation that you can do one shot, but then if you don't keep up, the credibility of the institutions organizing it, it would be damaged for at least for years in the future. So, of course, on this point, Eumans is working in cooperation with the coalition Citizens Take Over Europe, and we don't have ourselves the pretension or the ambition of being the most experienced and active subject, but I think it is very important to be involved in the process, and at the same time to do what we are the best able, what we are able to do the best, as this idea of participation, political nonviolence, and the issues that we are bringing on. So we have always to keep in mind the context, the scenario in which we are working, and without underestimating what could have as a negative impact and influence what is happening about the conference on the future of Europe results. I think it's very important also the potential clash or conflict or contradiction that there could be among involving the citizens and involving parliamentarians, what Francesco Galtieri was saying. And of course, the first rule to reduce at the maximum possible level this conflict is to remain cross-party, transnational and cross-party, so without a prejudice, neither positive, neither negative, in face to anybody within institution, and also to treat parliamentarians and elected people themselves as a citizens, because they are also citizens. What Francesco was proposing, a sort of self-commitment in replying to the constituency, I think is something that we could work on. On one side, it's very difficult when the electoral law make the concept of constituency a little bit blurred, a little bit difficult to, but the idea that Sibilla was mentioning, to have a a sort of citizen chambers, like a permanent mechanism of listening of citizens at European or at national level, I think could in part respond to the point that Francesco was saying, that there could be two ways of being accountable to the citizen. One way is the classical, let's say, constituency relationship to be revived, and we can build on that, of course. And on the other side, to be responsive on participatory democracy level. So the two things are not in contraposition, and are not one against each other, but can grow together. But we have to study together how we can build this mechanism at the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco. So in the meantime, if there are any other comments and questions, but I want to add something on this. The reason why the final document is so specific in its goals is because it's very important that we refine the methodology as we move forward. It's only refining the methodology that we can then scale up the initiative. So now Eumans is able to carry on one European Citizen Initiative at a time. We started 3 years ago saying that we should have had a package of European Citizen Initiative. It was important to have that vision in mind, because I think it's where, through cooperation, through collaboration with other organizations, through different ways of unlocking this power, we should achieve to that. But in the meantime, I think this idea of the committed MPs, for example, like Senator De Falco in Italy, okay, how this network can work in Italy, on which basis we can then reproduce this in other member states. Or maybe an initiative is helpful to connect with the likes of Senator De Falco in another state for another goal. But I think it's very important that we try in this phase to have less goals, super ambitious in the goal, and we take some time to work on the methodology, on the opportunity of engagement for the activists, because this is another element, like what a citizens can do. It's different than what a citizens would like to see happen. And so that's why the document is so specific and considers the setup of the Cannabis European Citizen Initiative as a step in itself for the build-up of the campaign, to reach the point that Francesco was mentioning, which is how you unleash the power once you have the 1 million signature. Somehow it's a reverse engineering mechanism. So first we need the network, then we do the bomb with the signatures and the direct actions that are needed together to break the public sphere, to create the debate and to bring the issue higher on the agenda. But we learned and we try to use these and it's an encouragement for us as members, as activists, as people that like the Eumans concept, to try and see the value of this narrower scope in this phase that is larger in the ambitions. Okay, the floor is still open, but I'm super happy to have with us Oksana Vulda. Ciao, Oksana.
Ciao, good day, everybody.
Oksana is the machine in Brussels of the NGO Promote Ukraine. Thanks to her, we launched together the collaboration on the Ukraine Now appeal that led to the demonstration that we had and the first success, our contribution to the success in the council. So I really wanted to have Oksana with us to have a perspective. I mean, we started our campaign on Ukraine Now with the voice of the 28 Ukrainian students that asked us to speed up the initiative on that. So now I wanted her to share the perspective of this work that we have done together from a political perspective mainly, but also maybe Oksana, I think it will be interesting if you can tell us something about how Ukraine is in general, but how is preparing for its potential role as a member of the European Union. There are a lot of concerns, of course, on the democracy, rule of law, justice system. So you are also a lawyer, and I guess you can help us to tell us the reality on the ground and in the future. And thanks for being with us.
Indeed, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. My name is Oksana Bulda. I'm a lead manifestations at NGO Promote Ukraine. And first of all, on behalf of our NGO and every Ukrainian, thank you very much. Thank to each European, each foreigner, each non-Ukrainian who has supported us in these difficult times. For me personally, and also for our team, it was incredible to see when the EU citizens come with such an initiative to help us to get the candidate status for Ukraine. So thank you very much. It is really highly appreciated. And I believe that without the support of Eumans, we won't be able to reach the same level of results as we have right now. With regards to the whole campaign and the results in the state of Ukraine right now, indeed, our government is really very grateful and excited to start this journey as a candidate status to join the EU. However, indeed, as Virginia mentioned, there are a lot of concerns. We also personally heard those concerns when we were gathering signatures in center of Brussels. The main topic when you ask people to sign, when they refuse, it is about corruption. Here, for me, as a lawyer, as a Ukrainian, it's important to highlight that, unfortunately, many Europeans, they do not really know the state of Ukraine. And there is lots of Russian propaganda here and there. And therefore, when you ask an average person, the first ultimate answer is always corruption, just because they have heard it somewhere 10 years ago or so. Myself, being a lawyer working in Ukraine all of my career, I have never had any issues with this topic. I never had a moment when somebody required something from me or myself given to someone. It was never. So it is possible to live in Ukraine, to be a lawyer and to be professional without being involved in any corruption whatsoever. Our government has now really fastened all of the reforms. However, it's challenging because there's also a military law now in place in Ukraine. Therefore, all of the reforms or all the legislation they implement is really not being put in practice yet, because there is no possibility for now, because everything is functioning with regards to providing the main assistance towards the military. You have heard that recently, last week, our parliament has approved and voted for the Istanbul Convention, which was a really very important step for our country. And we as activists were fighting for that for quite some time. It was really a milestone for us to know that at these circumstances, our parliament supports the convention. Of course, voting for the law does not necessarily mean that it is implemented and it's done task. Not at all. There is quite some work still to be done. And that's why we now see that the new wave of younger Ukrainian generations are entering the government of Ukraine. My friend, who I know for many years, who is also a lawyer, is now a deputy minister of economy of Ukraine. And I see that younger and younger people who have experience in working in the EU, are aware of European politics, are entering the government to boost the whole development and the reforms. With regards to corruption as well, the two main elements that Europe requires from Ukraine is to appoint the new head of Anti-Corruption Court of Ukraine and Anti-Corruption Prosecution Office. Our parliament is now working on that, but of course we see that in these circumstances it is very difficult to conduct the competitive element to select the person who really deserves this position and who can handle such a responsibility during the war times. Therefore, this is something that our government still has to follow up upon. Also, with regards to the freedom of speech and rule of law, we also see some progress, especially given our action during the Belgian Pride. It was very remarkable. It was really a very good idea to actually show people that there is not the same level of issues with human rights in Ukraine as it was before. It is a very big misconception that there is discrimination or so. It is still in place indeed, but the situation has improved recent times. And this also together with Eumans, when we were given the flyers to the people who participated in Pride, it was really a very powerful message towards them. And we also now see that Ukraine as a state and also our army do really support this. We have the whole battalion in the Ukrainian army where LGBT plus people are serving. So this is very remarkable. You would never see this in Russia or so in Kazakhstan or other countries. But average Europeans do not know this because they would not specifically Google for such information. Therefore, in their head, they still have the image from the past 20, 30 years ago when there was a Soviet Union and everything they knew about Ukraine was corruption and no rule of law and no human rights. Therefore, it is very important with such organizations like yours to really launch media campaigns to make sure that Europeans are aware that there is a progress in Ukraine, that there are younger generation activists who really are aligned, are aware, and are willing to implement all the European values in Ukraine. Our government is, of course, ambitious. They have indicated that it would be ideal for Ukraine in 2029 with the next elections to join the EU. However, we, of course, are being realistic. Our main aim now is, of course, to win the war and rebuild the country. Realistically looking at the situation, in order for us to join the EU, it is not necessary only to conduct all of the reforms, but also stabilize our economy, because EU doesn't need weak countries economically, and expected loss from our economy is quite significant because of the war. That's why I presume it will take more years. But the fact for us Ukrainians is not really to be formally admitted as the EU member. Already given the fact that EU member states voted to grant us a candidacy status is sufficient for us to boost our work and to work hard to implement those values. Because later on, regardless whether we are admitted to the EU and are the full member country or not, it's very important that our children live up to the European standards and value the same principles as are set in Europe. This came to my understanding with the time of also starting from Revolution of Dignity, where I first actually took the EU flag in hands, and I was very excited on Ukraine choosing that path. And then the whole disastrous journey that started with the war, we now do really understand the value and the freedom and the principles of Europe. Therefore, our government can be populistic sometimes or can have unrealistic views on the situation, but we, the younger generation, we do understand that this will be the work for us until all of our lives, and also to pass to other generations, because this will not happen over time, even with formally admitting Ukraine. There's a long journey and we are there to take up this challenge. That's why all of the Promote Ukraine volunteers who are now in Brussels and also in Ukraine, we do work hard on this journey, but also on preparing other younger generations so they would continue our work to ensure that all of the suffering, all of the sacrifices that Ukraine has done just to be considered as a European country are not for nothing, that it was worse for me 8 years ago to hold EU flag at the Revolution of Dignity, and that my choice was correct. And Ukraine, despite all of the disasters, still continue fighting for what we have chosen.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you very much, Oksana. Among the things that your parliament was able to do in the meantime was also legalizing medical cannabis for PTSD. And in tonight's meeting, we are also discussing a European initiative for cannabis legalization. And I think, as Marco, our other co-president, wrote, if a parliament under military law was able to legalize cannabis, probably the EU national parliaments can do the same more easily. And please consider our platform a platform also for you and the other volunteers to maybe start to work together on some of the specific matters that you mentioned in terms of human rights, fundamental freedoms, like our focus usually is not the enlargement of the European Union, but it became, and somehow I think Eumans is a pan-European movement, so it goes beyond the nationality on the passport. And in the meantime, I think the more we can find ways to maybe help you to show the Ukrainian civil society efforts in the direction beyond the war, of course. So I think we really built a bridge here, and I hope we can work on more initiatives together, because then all the things are held together. And thanks for the trust, of trusting these EU people to carry on your goal and do it together.
Thank you, Virginia. Indeed, we are now working on our further strategy. Given all of the developments now with the war, we're considering switching to more non-Western countries focus, because I believe we have already all of the allies in the EU, but unfortunately we see that other countries are divergent from the position that has taken the EU. That's why we will, of course, reach out for your help to convince, to talk to the countries who are not yet on board, because it is very important for Ukraine now, first of all, to win the war. And then I'm sure there will be lots of projects with regards to anti-corruption, judiciary, rule of law. And we are really grateful for you to offer your help. It's very important for us to know that we are not alone in this fight.
Thank you, Oksana. Thank you very much. I know you are both working and volunteering, so if you want to stay with us, you're more than welcome, but feel free to, I mean, the assembly goes on, but thanks a lot.
There are maybe some questions from our team members.
Is there any question specific on the Ukraine situation, on what Oksana said, or comments? Maybe we can collect them.
Well, I just want hello, Oksana, Marco Cappato, co-president of Eumans, together with Virginia. I just want to underscore that, and now I'm talking as an Italian person. We don't consider Italian democracy perfect, and it's far from perfect indeed. So I think that it is very important for all European citizens to seize the opportunity of enlargement to Ukraine and also to other countries, to reinforce the powers of the European Union to intervene even against European nation states when European fundamental values of democracy and rule of law are violated. So I think this is a very important point for some people or even government. The enlargement of the European Union is in a way an opportunity to weaken Europe because of the veto power that any and each national state can oppose to crucial political decisions. From our point of view, from Eumans' point of view, and my personal point of view, we have to do exactly the opposite. Exactly for the reason that enlargement is involving more and more countries and governments. We need to build a European Union with the sufficient power to intervene against the absolute sovereignty of national government, when, in particular, when they violate rule of law and fundamental rights. So I think these two battles are to be combined and unified in the same battle. Thanks.
Thank you, Marco. I don't know if Oksana, you want to react to this?
Yeah, indeed, we understand, and we also know that one of the countries that Ukraine is bordering with, there are indeed some problems with the fundamental principles and the values of the European Union. We, and myself personally, I was very surprised seeing what kind of legislation is being implemented in that country. It is totally unexpected for us. But indeed, I think the history has such a characteristics as being repeated, and it's really very important for us via the enlargement to show that all of the countries have to comply and they have to build up and force together for the same cause. I really hope that that unfortunate trend that we see now, especially on equality and women's rights worldwide, is really very disturbing. And I think Ukraine, as a country where women have quite some voice, where it was for many years matriarchat in our country, that we can also serve an example and influence those EU member states where such unfortunate human rights violations still take place. There are many things that Ukraine can learn from the EU, but also there are some that EU could also learn from us. So I do hope that this opportunity will bring us together and we will learn more about each other and implement the best practices.
Thank you, Oksana. Okay, so to be able to leave Oksana free, if anyone has any other comments or questions specifically on Ukraine, let's use this moment because it doesn't happen often, I guess. You can also speak in Italian. Ricordo che si può parlare anche in italiano. Okay, so we set you free, Oksana. We are in the same building, so we can cooperate quite easily if need be. And thanks again for your time also tonight. Thanks a lot.
Grazie, grazie. We will stay in touch. Thank you very much. See you.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Okay, so the time is scheduled until 9. In the meantime, I want to thank Monica and Valentina that are doing the interpretation of the assembly. So thanks a lot to our interpreters who at least once every 3 months allow us a more interactive debate thanks to the interpretation. Okay, last seconds, if someone wants to speak a general speech. Otherwise, I suggest we move toward the conclusions. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so let's move to the final phase. First question is, does any one of the members have any proposal that we don't know about statute amendments and statute changes, because that can be the complicated bit. So raise your hand if all of a sudden you have a proposal on this, which I take it as a no. As you know, the statute of Eumans is in the hands of the members because we are building this thing that didn't exist before. So in general, if you have ideas on how to work better, I mean, we have meetings every 2 weeks in Italian and every 2 weeks in English, so there is always space for debate. Second question now is with regards to the final document, which I hope you all have seen. I took the liberty of adding Moldova, as Nicolò Milanese suggested, because it's true that the candidate status was given both to Ukraine and Moldova. I don't know, Marco, what you think, but I think, I mean, our idea of enlargement is exactly not only for Ukraine, and I think it's good to recognize that both states got the candidacy status. And does anyone have amendments or integrations to the final document? I see a lot of eyes on that.
Sorry, Virginia, I was disconnected for a few seconds. That was maybe you already mentioned the indication by Nicola Milanese on, okay, sorry.
Exactly, I was saying we received, it's okay to add it, right? Okay. Okay, so do you think all of us that the document reflects the goals, ambitions, and things we can all somehow in different ways commit on? Good. So if Lorenzo, okay, let's go to the voting phase for formality. Can we go through the list and see who is not a Eumans member? I think Oreste Gallo is a member, right, Oreste?
I'm checking if everyone who has the writing member is indeed a human member. And there are a few who didn't wrote.
Exactly. Maybe Lorenzo will tell you the name of the participants and
Yes.
you check if they are members or not. So to the participants in the meeting, is it fine to proceed this way?
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, so we have Alberto Ceccolini.
No.
Not a member. Andrea Andreoli, member. Heike Smook from Right to Die Europe. Heike, I don't know if you want to say a few words. I know that Hugh is the Eumans member, but of course, Heike, if you want to say a few words, you are more than welcome. Cristiana Zerosi, member. Francesca Turano Campello, member. I'm gonna change her name. Francesco De Matteo, member. Galtieri, member. Giovanni Malatesta?
No.
Ok, Giovina Ruberti?
No.
Ok. Gregorio De Falco, not yet. Laura Barilla?
No.
Ok. Luca Truisi, not yet. Marco Cappato, member. Marco Ferrero?
Yes.
Yes, ok. Rename member. Okay. Maria Pia Viscomi, member. Oreste Gallo, if I remember correctly, is a member.
Okay. We'll need a second because I can't find him. Oreste, do you remember if you subscribe to Eumans? Because, okay, I just noted, yeah, he's a member.
Oreste is a member. Stefano Manco, last person.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So some people weren't reacting to their names, so I hope they're still with us. But the final count of members is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, we have 15 members attending the assembly. So let's use the hand function of Zoom to vote. So who votes in favor of the final document? Raise your hands now.
You said in favor?
In favor to the final document, yes. So I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, 11 votes in favor of the final document. So please lower your hands. Lower your hands, lower your hands. Abbassate la mano. Okay, very good. Now, anyone vote against the final document? Raise your hand now. Okay, no one is against. And then Anyone is astensione, abstention? Ah, ok, resta a favore, so 12. And no abstention. So
Non toccare l'olio lo sport.
we would have 3 votes missing, which I guess are either not present or not willing to vote. Okay, perfect. So we have a few missions for the summer. As mentioned in the order of the works, the agenda for the next week is highlighted on the Eumans website. So the most urgent event is the one on Thursday, on the 30th, at the Italian Senate, actually in the Palazzo della Minerva, on citizen assemblies with Lorenzo Mineo, Senator De Falco, Marco Cappato, and the others. If Lorenzo wants to share the link in the chat, you can all circulate it with your groups. And if you know anyone in Rome that might be interested, I think the event is important not only for people that are interested in the methodology of the citizen assembly, but also maybe an opportunity to present the project to partners, organizations, groups that we think might be interested in what we're doing. And also, if you know anyone that is foundations or organizations that might be interested in the project of funding a project of citizen assemblies, it's a good opportunity. And then we do have the weekly meetings. We tried, as you have seen on the website, to have a bit of a structure for the meeting. We do one meeting in Italian 1 week on Tuesday evenings and one meeting in English every other week on Thursdays to keep the balance. And the calendar is in the chat. The next Eumans Members Assembly will be at the end of September, so 3 months from now. An idea that we want to develop is how to use the assembly as part of the European Citizen Initiative work on cannabis, and maybe to organize a digital assembly as usual, but maybe with some stronger presence here in Brussels of potential interlocutors. Thanks everyone.
Grazie Monica, grazie Valentina, thanks to the interpreters. Also,
exactly. Thanks interpreters, thanks all of us.
Thank you all.
And keep rolling. Ciao.
Bye bye.
Ciao.
Ciao ciao.
Ciao a tutti, tutte.
Ciao a tutti, ciao.
Grazie.
Ciao
Grazie
ciao.
a tutti voi. Buona serata.
Ciao ciao.
Grazie. Ci chiudo, poi ci si può sentire. Ciao.